This meeting is now called to order. Is there any member who will move to dispense with the calling of the roll?
Chairman, may I move to dispense the rolling of the call?
Is there a second?
Second.
Any objections? Hearing none, the motion is carried. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Before we start, may we first acknowledge the presence of our colleagues. Vice Chairperson Reynante Arrogancia of the 3rd District of Quezon. Vice Chairperson Brian Raymond Suan of the 2nd District of Parañaque. Maria Nina Lacson of Manila Teachers Party List. Representative Adrian Michael Amatong of the 3rd District of Zamboanga del Norte. Representative Salvador Plato of the 6th District of Bulacan. Representative Antonio Roman of the 1st District of Bataan. Representative Richard Gomez of the 4th District of Leyte. Deputy Majority Leader Zia Adyong of the 1st District of Lanao del Sur. May I also ask the ComSec to acknowledge the presence of our resource persons, please?
Mr. Chair, we have with us today representatives from government agencies and our stakeholders. From the Anti-Money Laundering Council, we have Attorney Anjo Cruz, Legal Officer 1 Counseling, Adjudication and Mutual Legal Assistance Unit. From the Department of Education, we have Director John Kevin Rivera for Public Affairs Service, Ms. Ayet Ferrios, the Supervising Education Program Specialist, Bureau of Curriculum Development. From the Department of Information Communications Technology, we have Mr. Giancarlo Cristi. From the National Intelligence Coordinating Agency, we have Director Lester Gastala from the Cyber Threat Intelligence and Operations Office. We also have Attorney Mary May Arcilia, the Agency Legal Service, and Attorney Jerome Reyes from the Directorate for Counterintelligence and Security, both observers. From the National Security Council, we have Assistant Director General for Strategic Communications, Francis Jude Lawenko. From the Office of the Court Administrator of the Supreme Court, Deputy Court Administrator Leo T. Madrazo. From the Philippine Coast Guard, their team is headed by Commander Maria Dulce Erica F. Alcaraz. From the from the Presidential Communications Office, we have Undersecretary Precious Hipolte Castello for Executive and Institutional Affairs. From the Broadcast Advertising Marketing Industries, we have Attorney Rina Seco, representing MBC Media Group and Kapisanang Broadcaster ng Pilipinas. From independent media organizations and accredited fact-checkers, we have from Verifiles, Ms. Ellen Tordesillas. From Rappler, we have Ms. Gemma Mendoza, the Head of Digital Services and Lead Researcher for Disinformation. From the Cybersecurity and Tech Specialists, from Global AI Council, we have Ms. Catherine Halandoni and Attorney Mark Goriseta. From Serolytics, we have Mr. Dominic Ligot, Ms. Frances Claire Taiko, and Dr. Ivan Polanco. From democracy.net.ph, we have Director Carlos Nazareno. From the Alliance of Tech Innovators for the Nation, we have Mr. Monchito Ibrahim. From Makati Business Club, we have Ms. Bettina Bautista. From the social media platforms, we have from TikTok Philippines, Attorney Eve Gonzalez, the Head of Public Policy. And from Meta Platforms, we have Ms. Alice Burisat Rijo, Head of Misinformation Policy of the Asia Pacific, and Mr. Jenickson David, Public Policy Manager, Facebook Philippines Representative Office. Mr. Chair, we also invited representatives from the UP College of Media and Communication and also from Google. Unfortunately, they cannot be here today, but they sent their position papers, Mr. Chair. And also from the National Bureau of Investigation, Attorney Richelle Abelida, and Senior Agent Ria Vanessa Asuncion, Executive Officer.
Thank you to all the resource persons for joining us. We appreciate your time. So we had our organizational meeting last September 10, wherein we likewise adopted our internal rules. So the Secretariat has already distributed the copies of the minutes of that meeting earlier. Do we have a motion to...
Mr. Chairman, I move to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the organizational meeting and to approve the same.
There is a motion to dispense with the minutes,
Second.
with the reading of the minutes. Any objection? Hearing none, the motion is carried. My distinguished colleagues in the committee, our esteemed guests and stakeholders, our committee secretariat staff, good afternoon to all of you. We commence the first regular meeting of our committee by placing ourselves on the offensive. We take the fight straight to those spreading false information across all media platforms who intend to undermine our most cherished democratic institutions. The dissemination of false information, commonly referred to as fake news, is an ongoing malady that gravely afflicts our society. The terms viral and virality often characterize the spread of false information. True enough, fake news is akin to a virus. Once it spreads, it multiplies itself through those who wittingly and unwittingly purvey or share the same, particularly through social media. And similarly to a virus, addressing fake news needs not only an aggressive approach, but a more comprehensive one that decisively cures this social illness. Fake news blurs the line between fact and fiction. With the help of our stakeholders and our colleagues in government, we aim to firmly delineate that line through responsive and strategic legislation. We are not here to simply come up with band-aid solutions. We recognize that fake news is a deeply rooted issue that arises out of a number of causes, from the lack of proper regulation to the apparent deficiency of digital literacy programs, especially for the youth. The TRICOM, during the 19th Congress, highlighted the dangers of wanton and unchecked dissemination of fake news. We witnessed multiple malevolent actors, both local and foreign, using emerging technology such as artificial intelligence to further spread the envelope of false information. We saw deepfakes, the manipulation of images, and even the use of generative AI to come up with false narrations. Thus, we need to craft legislation that is truly systemic in scope and future-proof in its enforcement. The Committee on Public Information in the 20th Congress builds on the legacy of the TRICOM. Rest assured that as we discuss the pending bills on the matter, we will always be guided by the constitutional safeguards on speech and self-expression. Our people will not be shackled in our quest for truth and in our crusade against false information. We only aim to capacitate our people to be more critical and discerning on all forms of content that they may encounter. And for our stakeholders, especially the social media platforms, to be more receptive to potential government regulation. On behalf of the Committee on Public Information, we are grateful for your attendance and we look forward to a productive afternoon ahead. Maraming salamat po. So for this meeting, we will deliberate on 12 bills addressing the proliferation of false information across media platforms. There are 10 standalone bills, while 2 seek to amend the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012 to include fake news or disinformation. They will all be discussed. Later on, we need to decide the best direction to take. The bills and matrix of the same were emailed to our members and resource persons already. So I hope you all have your reference materials with you, and we do have a few copies here if you want to approach the Secretariat. So the submitted position papers were already distributed earlier to our members. Now, I would like to invite our authors to deliver their sponsorship remarks, starting with Representative Plato for House Bill number 299.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To our distinguished members of the committee, to our esteemed resource persons, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. May proposed House Bill number 299, an act penalizing the publication and dissemination of false content on social media platforms, is a crucial measure to protect the integrity of our public sphere, especially at these most critical times. While we are determined to uphold the right to freedom of speech, this right has a clear limit: the malicious spread of intentional disinformation. Fake news is not harmless opinion. It is a digital weapon that erodes public trust, incites panic and division, and threatens our democratic institutions and national security. This bill aims to hold those who knowingly and maliciously fabricate and circulate false content accountable, ensuring the digital realm does not remain a haven for deliberate deceit. It is a necessary update to our laws to address the rapidly evolving digital threat. No less than the Supreme Court has recognized in dismissing the petition of the bloggers that freedom of expression is not absolute. I urge my colleagues to support this vital legislation, together with other similar measures, to safeguard our citizens from manipulation and restore the value of truth and responsibility in our online and social media discourse. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Representative Plato. May we ask Representative Arrogancia for his sponsorship speech for House Bill 520.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, fellow members of the House, colleagues and guests. Thank you for the consideration of House Bill number 520. And in the interest of time, I would like to adopt my explanatory note as the sponsorship message of this bill. However, I would like to state that this bill defines disinformation that intentionally utilizes false information that would cause serious harm against national interest. It likewise seeks the amendment of RA 10175 or the Cybercrime Prevention Act. As a member of this collegial body, I welcome this deliberation and will be amenable to the revision and changes of my proposed legislation. Thank you and good day to all.
Thank you, Representative Arrogancia. May we call on Vice Chairman Lordan Suan to sponsor House Bill 2697 on behalf of the Majority Leader, and also for his own bill, House Bill 5241.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, honorable members of the committee, my fellow public servants, good afternoon. I am honored to sponsor House Bill number 2697, filed by our Majority Leader, Sandro Marcos, and House Bill 5241, both referring to Anti-Fake News and Disinformation Act. These measures seek to make it unlawful for anyone to knowingly and deliberately spread false information or fake news. They also prohibit the creation, operation, or funding of troll farms and organized online campaigns that aim to spread lies or deceive the public. I filed this bill as an advance of truth and as a supporter of proper information dissemination. Throughout my years in public service, from my time as Media and Political Affairs Officer of the late Senate President Edgardo Angara, to serving as head of the Media Relations and Accreditations Division of the Office of the Press Secretary, I have witnessed firsthand how powerful and vital media is. It serves as a bridge between the government and the Filipino people, helping them understand the priorities, programs, and efforts of the administration. And when that bridge stands on honest and unshakable grounds, our democracies grow stronger. Over the years, media has changed so much, both in terms of content that we consume and the platforms we tune into. Sa panahon ngayon, ng internet pa rin ang pangunahing pinagkukunan ng impormasyon ng mga karamihan sa mga Pilipino. Isang click lamang, may access na tayo sa balita at kwento mula sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo. But with all the advantages that this widespread connectivity brings, it also means that our people are much vulnerable to dangers online, one of which is the spread of fake news. Mr. Chair, distinguished colleagues, we know how fake news can be weaponized to manipulate public opinion, incite fear and panic, and endanger our democratic processes. For example, the recent fake news about South Korea canceling an infrastructure loan to the Philippines, or that a certain fintech company was subject to a data breach, are damaging to our foreign and investor relations. More importantly, it undermines the public's trust in both our public and private institutions. With the upcoming barangay elections next year, the threat of false and misleading information becomes even more pressing. In fact, past elections have shown us how fake news has gone beyond the use of troll farms, because now AI-generated content and deep fakes are used to target certain candidates or personalities during the campaign season. These are the only few of the many reasons why we are advocating for the passage of this bill. This proposal is the most tangible proof of our commitment to fight the growing threat of disinformation. Our hope is that with this measure, we can protect the Filipino people from deceiving information and ultimately reminds us all that the truth is and must always be the foundation of good governance. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I look forward to a fruitful discussion with our colleagues.
Thank you, Vice Chair Yam Suan. The Chair recognizes Representative Gomez, who will sponsor House Bill 4562.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and colleagues and guests. House Bill number 4562 is a measure that seeks to protect the Filipino people from one of the most harmful threats of our time, the deliberate and malicious spread of false information and false news. Mr. Chair, the Constitution guarantees freedom of speech, of expression, and of the press, freedoms that are pillars of our democracy. But the same Constitution, through its preamble, reminds us that the values of truth, justice, and freedom must guide our society. These freedoms were never meant to be weapons of deceit or panloloko. They were never intended to shield those who deliberately distort facts, to confuse the public, incite hatred, or manipulate democratic discourse. With the prevalence of digital platforms and the unprecedented speed with which information now travels, the line between truth and fabrication has become dangerously blurred. Fake news, half-truth, and manipulated content spread faster than verified information. What used to be simple rumors can now reach millions within minutes, and the consequences, Mr. Chair, are no longer trivial. They ignite fear, influence elections, harm reputations, destabilize communities, threatens the justice system, and undermine public order and national security. We have seen how disinformation campaigns fuel hostility, distort political debate, and divide families and communities. We have witnessed how lies, packaged as news, can weaken institutions and erode trust in government. The digital sphere, once a tool for empowerment, has too often become a battleground where truth struggles to survive. House Bill number 4562 seeks to restore that balance. This measure clearly defines fake news and disinformation. establishes prohibited acts, and provides reasonable penalties for the malicious and intentional spread of false information. It does not curtail free speech, but it protects it, ensuring that freedom is exercised responsibly, not abused for personal gain or political manipulation. This bill recognizes that liberty and accountability must go hand in hand. And in an age where lies can go viral, silence and inaction are no longer acceptable. We must strengthen our laws so that new technologies are not exploited to mislead our people, stir confusion, or influence public opinion through deception. In view of the foregoing, Mr. Chair, I respectfully ask my colleagues for their full support for the approval of House Bill 4562. Thank you.
Thank you. May we call on Representative Lacson from ACT Teachers, from Manila Teachers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the explanatory notes of House Bill 251, 3472, House Bill 3799, House Bill 4965, House Bill 5330 as the author's sponsorship remarks. And also, Mr. Chair, I also move to insert into the records the speech sent by Representative Broya D. Villanueva as his sponsorship for House Bill 4160. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion is carried. So thank you very much to the authors for your introduction of these bills and for your commitment to curb this threat. At this juncture, we would like to hear from our partners and stakeholders. Some of you have already submitted your position papers, and our members have copies already. For those who haven't, please provide the committee secretariat with copies as soon as they become available so that we may know the discussion points from your end. But before that, I'm so sorry. May we request Representative Roman to sponsor House Bill 4544?
Thank you for saving the best for the last. I'm kidding. No ko lang po. Mr. Chair, distinguished colleagues, good afternoon. It's my honor to sponsor House Bill 4544, a measure born not out of theory, but out of lived experience in my district, in our communities, and in our public service. Fake news is not a minor nuisance. It is a special problem that demands special solution. Its harms are both intangible and tangible. It distorts public discourse, corrodes trust, foments division, it undermines democratic participation. And these harms are not only felt by individuals, they spread collectively, damaging institutions, destabilizing communities, and weakening the unity and shared truth that every democracy depends on. I have seen how disinformation campaigns operate at scale, how coordinated inauthentic behavior manipulates real citizens, and how unseen algorithmic systems can amplify harm faster than truth can catch up. As a public servant and as a private Filipino citizen, I have also seen the toll it takes on families, on reputations, on communities, trying simply to do good. House Bill 4544 offers a rights-respecting, systems-based response, focusing not on regulating speech or policing opinions, but on platform accountability, transparency, and safeguards against the most harmful and coordinated forms of digital manipulation. It introduces a co-regulatory model that empowers independent standards, encourages responsible behavior by platforms, and protects our people without compromising constitutional freedoms. Colleagues, this bill is about defending the integrity of our shared digital space. It is about ensuring that truth, not deception, remains the foundation of our public life. And most of all, it is about standing with our fellow Filipinos who deserve a digital ecosystem that informs rather than deceives, that empowers rather than exploits. I humbly ask for your support for House Bill 4544. Let us act with clarity, courage, and compassion so that our democracy, both online and offline, may stand on firmer ground. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Representative Roman. I would like to recognize the presence of Representative Antonio Tinio of ACT Teachers. Thank you for coming. Our Deputy Minority Leader. So we would like to ask our resource persons to deliver your general statements, and please try to keep it clear and concise so that we may have enough time for all of you. So let's start with our government agencies. I would like to call on Undersecretary Precious Hipolito Castelo from the Presidential Communications Office for their presentation.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairman, and to this Honorable Committee for having us over. So from the part of the Presidential Communications Office, we express our appreciation to the honorable members of the House of Representatives for convening discussions on the various measures seeking to address misinformation, disinformation, and the broader phenomenon of information disorder. The urgency of this issue cannot be overstated. The Philippines, with nearly 87 million internet users and one of the highest daily social media usage rates in the world, is extremely vulnerable to digital manipulation. Filipinos spend almost 9 hours a day online, that is more than double the global average, making each citizen more exposed to falsehoods that exploit fears, divide communities, and ultimately erode trust in institutions and one another. Information disorder is no longer accidental. It is coordinated, professionalized, and increasingly powered by artificial intelligence. Synthetic voices, fabricated videos, and hyper-realistic images can be produced within minutes and circulated globally in seconds. These shifts have profound consequences for the public's safety, civic engagement, and emotional well-being. While elections are only one of many affected areas, the country is inevitably moving forward a period when digital manipulation can sway emotions and perceptions before the truth has time to catch up. Any legislative action taken now must anticipate the environment citizens will face, not the environment of 10 years ago. So, Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, may I please request that we recognize from our legal of the Presidential Communications Office, Attorney Luis Erica Ocampo, to continue with the recommendations very briefly.
Attorney Ocampo, you have the floor.
Good afternoon to the Honorable Committee on Public Information. With that said by our Undersecretary, we provide our recommendations based on the proposed House bills seeking to combat fake news or falsehoods using social media platforms. The PCO respectfully submits that whatever form the final consolidated bill takes, it should prioritize several core principles essential to crafting an effective constitutional and humane legal response. First, the law should focus accountability only on actors who intentionally and deliberately create or disseminate harmful false information. The distinction between genuine expression and deliberate deception is critical. Criminalizing mere errors, opinions, satire, or criticisms risks infringing on constitutional guarantees and may unintentionally censor legitimate discourse. A law that targets bad actors rather than ordinary citizens protects the public without constraining democratic participation. Second, legislation must address modern and emerging digital threats, particularly the use of artificial intelligence to fabricate and manipulate contents. Tools capable of producing synthetic images, deepfake videos, impersonated voices, and manipulated text can be weaponized to influence public perception with unprecedented speed and realism. The next election will unfold in an environment where citizens may encounter fabricated content that looks and sounds authentic. A forward-looking law should be directed at enforcing digital literacy that allows the people to distinguish between authentic and synthetic contents. Third, the PCO supports provisions that require reasonable transparency and responsibility from digital platforms. Platforms shape what information rises, what narratives are amplified, and what is recommended to users. requiring them to label synthetic content, disclose political advertisements, explain how their algorithms influence visibility, and publish regular moderation and safety reports strengthens accountability without restricting speech. These measures empower Filipinos to better understand the digital environment in which their opinions are formed. Fourth, the institutionalization of media and information literacy, or MIL, is indispensable. Long-term resilience cannot rely solely on penalties. Citizens need the ability to assess credibility, analyze sources, interpret digital cues, and responsibly navigate online environments. MIL is the most democratic and sustainable shield against manipulation. A society that can recognize misleading narratives is harder to deceive, regardless of technology. And finally, strong safeguards for free expression must be embedded in the law itself. The Supreme Court has consistently emphasized that while free expression is not absolute, restrictions must pass established constitutional tests and cannot be justified by hypothetical harms. Any final measure must explicitly protect legitimate speech, journalistic work, academic analysis, satire, and honest mistakes. This ensures that the goal of the law remains the prevention of manipulation and not the suppression of dissent. Congress has the constitutional duty to enact legislation that protects citizens not only from today's online harms, but from the exponentially more complex environment they will face tomorrow. By focusing on intentional deception, modern digital threats, platform transparency, media literacy, and freedom of expression, lawmakers can craft a law that upholds constitutional rights while strengthening public resilience. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just to continue and with our conclusion, the Presidential Communications Office expresses its full support for the efforts of Congress to craft legislation that addresses the dangers posed by misinformation and disinformation. The PCO respectfully recommends that the final consolidated bill clearly differentiate malicious deception from protected speech, respond to modern AI-driven threats, encourage transparency among digital platforms, elevate media literacy as a national priority, and reinforce constitutional protections. Such a law will protect the Filipino public today, prepare the nation for future technological challenges, and safeguard the integrity of democratic discourse. The power to shape an information environment where truth prevails over manipulation lies in the hands of our legislators. The PCO stands ready to support this work and looks forward to collaborative progress toward a safer and more resilient information ecosystem for all Filipinos. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just to acknowledge other stakeholders, we have from the Department of Justice, Attorney Maria Lordan Suan, State Counsel 4. From the Anti-Red Tape Authority, Deputy Director General for Legal, Undersecretary Genesis Abbott. From the Bureau of Internal Revenue, we have Attorney Ralbert Tibayan. From the Commission on Elections, we have Attorney John Rex Laudianco, Director. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
May we call on the Department of Education?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I will keep this brief. The Department of Education fully supports all the efforts of this committee in crafting a comprehensive bill regarding fake news. DepEd is often a victim of fake news, including suspension of classes as well as the cancellation of grade 11 to 12, which we combat every week. So our hope is that we're more proactive in terms of avoiding all of this so that it doesn't cause confusion among all our 48 million students as well as about 1 million teachers. We are also taking proactive approach in mapping all the learning competencies that would help us combat fake news among citizens. This includes analysis of text, reading comprehension, as well as effective and contextual communication, so that we're also arming our citizens in terms of decoding fake news. That said, under the leadership of Secretary Sanin Angara, you have the full support of the department in terms of consolidating all of this and coming up with a more comprehensive legislative action. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. May we call on the Department of Budget and Management? Attorney Trish Baraan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, honorable members of this committee, and to our fellow public servants. First of all, Mr. Chair, we recognize the intention of the bill, and this is in line with one of the LEDAC measures also in relation to the right of information bill. So we kindly take note lang po of the two points on House Bill 3472 on the creation of Cyber Disinformation and Digital Truth Office on Section 4 and the creation and use of Disinformation Control Fund. We note po that in line with the government optimization program of the government, so we would like to recommend the review and assessment of the existing government offices, and if there is a need to really create the Cyber Disinformation and Digital Office to ensure that there will be no duplication of functions among government agencies, or ma-harmonize po sila to ensure lang po wala ding overlapping. And on the creation of fund, we would like to express the policy of the economic managers on the creation of a separate fund other than funds under the GAA. So we respectfully recommend that the funding for the implementation of the bill should be under the General Appropriations Act and shall be subject to the usual budget preparation process and authorization by Congress. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Attorney Trish. May we call on the Department of Information and Communications Technology, USEC Aboy Paraiso.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, to honorable members of this Committee on Information and Communications. We'd like to thank the honorable Chair and this committee for sponsoring these various bills, especially those looking to amend RA 1175, or the Anti-Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012. Fake news is a problem not only to individuals and persons, but it is also a problem to public safety and national security. But there is a solution. This is a low-hanging fruit, Mr. Chair, Your Honors. Partnership works. We in the DICT and the CICC have seen and experienced that partnership works, whether it's with our private sector partners or with social media partners. But we have to arm them with sufficient legislation to help them both pinpointing accountability and responsibility, and a clear definition of fake news, solely targeting their dangerous effects, and not only to silence opinions or expressions. Based on international guidelines, we adopt and propose that the best practices be included. Such regulation must, however, satisfy the following conditions. The harmful effects must be clearly defined and demonstratively linked to the prohibited conduct. Number 2, the law must narrowly be tailored to prevent only specific harms identified. 3, the definition of false information must be precise, clear, and limited to willful and malicious falsehoods in order to avoid an undue chilling effect on legitimate speech and expression. 4, procedural safeguards must be instituted to prevent abuse and ensure compliance with due process. These conditions ensure that any regulation or false information is aligned with the constitutional and jurisprudence, guaranteeing freedom of speech, and respects the preferred status of free expression while enabling the state to protect the public from demonstrable harm. Striking a balance between safeguarding the constitutional right to free speech and enabling the state to regulate harmful information is both necessary and achievable. To this end, we respectfully recommend that the proposed bills be: 1, adopt a clear statutory definition of false information, limiting it to deliberate and malicious falsehood posing a demonstrable imminent threat. 2, differentiate between protected speech, unintentional error, and malicious disinformation. 3, ensure proportional and reasonable penalties calibrated to the severity and impact of the offense. 4, incorporate clear standards and procedural safeguards to prevent arbitrary enforcement. And 5, to promote complementary non-punitive measures such as digital literacy initiatives and transparent government communications. Mr. Chair, members of this honorable committee, you have the full support of the DICT and the CICC in this endeavor. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Yusek Paraiso. May we call on the Department of Justice, Attorney Maria Lordan Suan.
Hello, good afternoon, Your Honors. The DOJ actually, in fact, drafted a position paper in the matter, but we have yet to submit it. Since last week, we hosted back-to-back ASEAN meetings, and we have the President as the keynote speaker. But with the indulgence of the committee, I will say here the 4 points that our office has classified as very significant for the consolidated bills. So first, we have noticed and observed that on definition of terms, the distinctions among the versions lie in their terminology. To harmonize them, a unified definition should encompass all forms of false or misleading digital content. In other words, it is recommended that a single consolidated House bill be adopted, incorporating the essential terms and definitions categorized according to their intent, implications, impact, or classification. And the provisions of prohibited acts or punishable acts across the 12 different House bills, which differ mainly in intent, scope, actors involved, and triggering conditions. Again, we suggest to harmonize these varying approaches. It is recommended again that the single consolidated House bill integrate the most significant and forward-looking elements of each measure. And the creation of cyber disinformation and Digital Truth Office under the DICT, its liaison officers, or registration of social media accounts, we believe that it is necessary and proper policy response to the evolving digital landscape of our country, especially the youth. When harmonized under a single framework, these mechanisms can strike a balance between protecting free expression and ensuring digital accountability, fostering an informed, responsible, resilient, and safer online community. And finally, on the provisions of exceptions, we have noticed that the House bills ensures to not penalize legitimate expressions such as satire, opinions, honest mistakes, or good faith journalism and academic work. These safeguards prevent abuse of law, uphold constitutional rights, and maintain a balance between combating fake news and protecting democratic freedoms. In a gist, we are in full support of the passage of this long overdue anti-false information bill. Please note that for us, as a suggestion, the best course is to harmonize all existing FOI bills into one comprehensive, coherent, and enforceable law. A unified bill should integrate the strongest, most progressive provisions from all other bills to ensure consistency, inclusiveness, safety, and accountability. Thank you, Your Honors.
Thank you, Attorney Suan. May we call on the National Intelligence Coordinating Agency?
Mr. Chair, honorable members of the committee, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Director Gastala po from the Cyber Threat Intelligence Operations of the National Intelligence Coordinating Agency. Thank you for allowing us to share our perspective from the intelligence community. The threat posed by disinformation is not theoretical. We have seen firsthand how coordinated falsehood can be weaponized to undermine institutions, influence public sentiment, and erode trust in government. This year, former Senator Tolentino's revelation regarding the Infinitus operations demonstrated how foreign actors can exploit online platforms to fabricate narratives, mobilize networks, and manipulate public perceptions against Philippine institutions. Recently, we have also seen a number of disinformation pertaining to the upcoming ASEAN Summit and the growing number of regional spearfishing ASEAN-themed campaign targeting government and defense entities, diplomatic missions, and associated infrastructure in the Philippines and across Southeast Asia. Abroad, we have seen similar patterns. Foreign influence operations in elections and referendums, where coordinated disinformation, often supported by foreign intelligence services, sought to distort democratic outcomes. These events highlight that disinformation is now a tool of statecraft, used to destabilize nations from within. We therefore support the intent of the anti-false information bills. As to our comments on the proposed provisions, we have included them in our letter to the committee dated 14 November 2025. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the members of this committee.
Thank you, Director Gastala. May we call on the National Security Council? Assistant Director Francis Jude Lawenco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to the members of the committee and everybody here. The National Security Council has the duty to evaluate and analyze all information, events, and incidents in terms of the risks that they pose or implications upon and/or threats to the overall security and stability of the nation, for the purpose of recommending to the President appropriate responses thereto and/or actions thereon. As enshrined in the National Security Policy of 2023 to 2028, the NSC envisions a free, resilient, peaceful, and prosperous archipelagic and maritime nation at peace with itself and its neighbors, enabled and protected by reliable defense and public safety systems. The freedom of speech, of expression, and of the press are constitutionally guaranteed under Section 4, Article 3 of the 1987 Constitution. However, the state also recognizes the increasing threat posed by the intentional, malicious dissemination of false information, especially through digital and social media platforms that are weaponized and therefore endanger public safety, erode democratic institutions, and threaten national security. Therefore, the National Security Council supports the passage and consolidation of the anti-false information bills with some modifications so as to balance the need to seize the proliferation of fake news on one hand while avoiding the curtailment of democratic freedoms on the other hand. The NSC, in particular, supports the inclusion of endangering or undermining national security, public safety, or diplomatic relations should the offense result to such as one of the aggravating circumstances as would be defined in Section 8 of House Bills 2697, 3799, 4562, 4965, and 5241. Also, we propose the inclusion of a provision for an information drive or possibly the incorporation in the academic syllabus on the matter to increase awareness on false information or fake news. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Assistant Director Francis. Next, we have the Anti-Red Tape Authority. USEC Genesis Abbott.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair and honorable members of the committee. We actually have already submitted our position paper, but I'd like to highlight some of those later. The intentional and malicious spread of false information or fake news poses a significant and growing threat to the very foundation of our modern democratic society. While we vigorously uphold the constitutional right to freedom of speech, expression, and the press, we must also recognize that this liberty is not absolute and does not extend to the deliberate manipulation of the public with the intent to cause harm. The rapid rise of digital platforms and social media has created an environment where falsehoods can spread unchecked, endangering public safety, eroding trust in vital institutions, and even threatening national security. We have seen how disinformation campaigns can sow confusion, incite hatred and violence, distort public policy debates, influence electoral outcomes, and lead people to make dangerous personal decisions, such as using harmful cures during a public health crisis. Existing legal frameworks are simply inadequate to address the scale and speed of this digitally amplified threat. The proposed legislations, or the bills that the Congress has initiated, is not just an attempt to stifle legitimate critique or honest mistakes. Instead, it aims to deter and penalize those malicious actors who knowingly use falsehoods to manipulate citizens for personal, financial, or political gain. By establishing a clear modern law that regulate and penalize intentional disinformation and require a degree of accountability from the platforms that facilitate its spread, we can better protect the integrity of our information landscape and affirm the values of both liberty and responsibility that are essential for a functional society. The immediate passage of this bill into law is necessary to modernize our laws and safeguard the public interest in an informed and responsible digital age. Your Honor, as we have already submitted our position paper, we have some comments on the bills that have been forwarded to us. But I'd like to highlight the one which I think is of significant concern from ARTA, which is the imposition of timelines for the action of the regulatory offices or agencies. One of the bill imposes a regulatory office that will issue orders to take down this false information. We are subscribing to the timeline for these agencies to act or to take down the false information so that they can be liable and so that there is a clear guideline on how they can be acting on that particular false information, Your Honor. That's all for ARTA, Your Honor.
Thank you, USEC Abbott. May we recognize Representative Paulo Henry Marcoleta of Sagip Party List, Senior Minority Member. Thank you for coming. Next, we have the National Privacy Commission, Attorney Lee Ann Santos Javier.
Hi, good afternoon, Mr. Chair. So on behalf of the National Privacy Commission, we recognize how important it is to stop the spread of false information, to keep the public safe, and to maintain a digital environment that people can trust. We share the policy goal of protecting public safety, ensuring fair and credible elections, and strengthening public trust in our institutions. The Commission supports the intent of the proposed House bills that seeks to prevent the spread of false information. As the country's data protection authority, we also emphasize that any action taken to address false information must continue to respect the Data Privacy Act of 2012 and uphold every individual's right to data privacy. Measures to address false information should be fair, responsible, and balanced, ensuring that they protect people without compromising their rights and freedoms. We thank the Honorable Committee for inviting the National Privacy Commission to participate in this discussion and for recognizing the importance of data protection in this legislative effort. The Commission is currently completing its detailed comments on the proposed measures, and we will submit our position paper once this review is finalized. We remain committed to working closely with lawmakers and stakeholders for these reforms to move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Attorney Lee. May we call on Deputy Court Administrator Leo Madrazo of the Office of the Court Administrator of the Supreme Court.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, honorable members of the committee. The Office of the Court Administrator welcomes new legislation protecting the truth, especially on online platforms where the potential spread of misinformation is both extremely easy and vast. This would especially benefit our courts whose acts are presumed official and legitimate by most people, and whose credibility is thus susceptible to being misused as instruments of falsehood. Moreover, this effort would help preserve the integrity of court issuances and the effectivity of court processes. However, the parameters for what constitutes fake news, especially on matters of public interest, should be defined, having in mind the importance of constructive freedom of expression, especially when it comes to comments by people on their government. We respectfully submit, Mr. Chair, Your Honor.
Thank you, Attorney Madrazo. From the Anti-Money Laundering Council, Attorney Anjo Cruz.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, honorable members of the Committee on Public Information, distinguished guests and from government, private sector, and from the media. Also, on behalf of the Anti-Money Laundering Council, we thank the committee for the opportunity to participate in today's deliberations on the various House bills seeking to regulate or penalize the creation and dissemination of false information. After a careful review of the 12 subject bills, the AMLC respectfully notes that these proposed measures, whether framed as standalone criminal statutes or amendments to the Cybercrime Prevention Act, do not assign any role to the AMLC, nor do they classify the proposed offenses as unlawful activities under the Anti-Money Laundering Act or the Terrorist Financing Prevention and Suppression Act. The AMLC's mandate is focused on preventing the Philippine financial system from being used for money laundering, terrorism financing, and related financial crimes. The offenses contemplated in the proposed bills primarily concern content-based regulation of speech and online communicative conduct, not the generation, movement, or concealment of illicit proceeds. Nevertheless, the AMLC fully supports the broader policy objective of promoting truthful, transparent, and accountable digital communications. We likewise recognize that countering malicious online falsehood is an essential component of national resilience. In the absence of any legal or operational nexus between the proposed legislations and the AMLA, the AMLC respectfully defers to the wisdom of Congress on the appropriate balance between necessary regulation and the preservation of constitutional freedoms. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair and honorable members of the committee.
Thank you, Attorney Cruz. May we call on the Bureau of Internal Revenue, Attorney Tibayan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, to all our lawmakers and resource speakers. The BR has no opposition to the aforementioned bills. Rest assured that the Bureau will support this initiative and will spare no resources within the bounds of law to aid other government agencies in combating fake information. That's all, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Tibayan. May we call on COMELEC, Attorney John Rex Laudianco.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and to the honorable members of this committee. The Commission on Elections expresses its full support and cooperation with the Congress for the very laudable bills in front of us. The emergence and increasing misuse of social media platforms, artificial intelligence, and deep fake technologies have brought unprecedented challenges in the realm of information integrity, especially in the context of democracy and the conduct of elections. Misuse of social media and AI-generated campaign materials, misinformation and disinformation perpetrates false narratives and causes confusion among the voters, effectively undermining the credibility of our democratic processes and posing a serious threat to the conduct of fair, truthful, and genuine elections. After obtaining significant inputs during several domestic and global consultations with other election management bodies, technology platforms, technology, legal, and media experts, including civil society organizations, and key election stakeholders such as the youth voters, political parties, accredited citizens arm, the Commission on Elections spearheaded in our own way and promulgated Resolution 11064 and 11064-A, which are the guidelines on the use of social media, artificial intelligence, and internet technology for digital election campaigns, and the prohibition and punishments of its misuse for disinformation and in misinformation. This, of course, is a pioneering policy of the Commission for the 2025 national and local elections, and we had intended to regulate digital election campaign and prohibition and the punishment of the misuse of social media, AI, and all other deliberate disinformation and misinformation in elections. Similar to the DICT and the CICC, we'd also like to highlight that interdisciplinary and multi-stakeholder collaboration and strategic partnerships with technology platforms and technology experts work. We had significantly attained successes during the elections with their cooperation and collaboration. They helped us in our online campaign platform registrations, in the proactive monitoring and initiation of legal actions, helping us together with the CICC, of course, with the incident reporting portal, the operationalization of the threat monitoring center, which intends to cushion the impact, and of course, through the use of streamlined, coordinated, and automated referral and case management system encompassing the different agencies of the government. As part of our ways forward, Your Honors, the Commission on Elections intends again to resubmit the revised Omnibus Election Code, similar to what we did in the 19th Congress, and this measure encompasses as well the modernization of our laws, including that of the digital and modernized ways for campaign, and the continued regulation of campaign in all its forms, even those as well not being envisioned by the previous 1980s law. And we also like to thank the authors and the sponsors for recognizing that election information is really part of the country's critical information infrastructure. And we likewise laud the measures for striking a balance between the freedom of speech and freedom of expression with meaningful, appropriate, proportionate, and necessary regulation. Lastly, Your Honor, the 2025 election cycle demonstrated both the scale of online election harms, which includes false dates, ID claims, coordinated inauthentic behaviors, deepfakes, and COMELEC's capacity to counter them through rapid platform cooperation, evidence preservation, show cause enforcement, and a functioning threat monitoring center are effective. Turning these hard-won practices into permanent law, as the bills had envisioned, funding lines, enforceable platform duties will surely lock in the gains, reduce response times, and harden the information environment before the next election cycle. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Attorney Laudianco. May we call on the National Bureau of Investigation, Attorney Richel Abilada.
Good afternoon. I am Attorney Vanessa Asuncion from the Cybercrime Division of the NBI. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and honorable committee members. The National Bureau of Investigation fully supports the efforts of the Congress to address the growing threat of online disinformation, particularly with the rise of AI-generated content, deepfakes, and coordinated digital manipulation that endanger public order and national security. At the same time, the NBI emphasizes the need for caution in crafting any disinformation law, ensuring that regulation targets intentional and harmful falsehoods without infringing on constitutionally protected speech. The NBI is yet to submit its position paper and is presently consolidating the same and will be submitting it to this honorable committee upon completion. Rest assured that the Bureau will persist in relentless campaign to enforce the law to its fullest and to protect the people from destructive effects of fake news. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Abilada. May we call on the Philippine National Police from the Anti-Cybercrime Group.
To the chairperson of the Committee on Public Information and the members of this esteemed committee and fellow resource persons, good afternoon. I am Police Brigadier General Wilson Asueta, the Acting Director of the Philippine National Police Anti-Cybercrime Group. So the PNP recognizes that the issue on false information transcends mere defamations. It has escalated into a digital public safety crisis. The PNP sees firsthand how coordinated disinformation is weaponized to facilitate financial scams, manipulate vulnerable individuals, incite panic, and undermine critical security initiatives. The core mandate of the PNP-ECG, so under the Cybercrime Prevention Act, allow us to investigate and prosecute offenses like computer-related fraud and cyber libel, to name a few. However, the unique challenge posed by malicious disinformation campaigns demands a new level. The PNP, okay na, mic test. The PNP believes that robust, well-crafted legislation combined with the specialized enforcement agencies like the PNP-ECG and the NBI is the essential key to safeguarding the integrity of the information sphere in the Philippines. So the PNP fully supports all the measures in addressing these false informations, and of course our position paper will soon be submitted to be delivered by our liaison officer. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Police Brigadier General Wilson Ansueta. Asueta. May we call on the Philippine Coast Guard, Commodore Maria Dulce Erica Alcaraz.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon to the Honorable Chairperson and the distinguished members of the House Committee on Public Information. I am Commander Alcaraz from the Philippine Coast Guard, and our team thanks you for the invitation to this House meeting. The PCG recognizes that digital transformation and cyber manipulation can affect the integrity of maritime operations. False information can disrupt and command and control and systems, interfere with distress communication, and endanger both personnel and maritime safety. Our agency has been at the forefront of countering coordinated disinformation campaigns, especially those undermining the country's sovereignty in the West Philippine Sea, wherein foreign actors deploy fake news to erode public trust, incite panic, and interfere with law enforcement operations. The anti-false information bills provide comprehensive legislation aimed at penalizing the malicious dissemination of falsehoods while strengthening digital platform regulations. These bills align with the state's policy to protect public order, national security and democratic institutions as enshrined in their declarations of policy. So in the behalf of our Commandant Admiral Ronnie Hill L. Gavan, Philippine Coast Guard, we express our full support on the legislation of the Anti-False Information Bill, sir. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commodore Alcaraz. So that is the last of our resource persons from government agencies. Now we will proceed with independent media organizations and accredited fact-checkers. So from Vera Files, Ms. Ellen Tordesillas, the President.
Magandang hapon po sa lahat. Vera Files is honored to be invited to this important initiative of the House Committee on Public Information in finding a solution to the serious problem of misinformation and disinformation that has reached a level that destroys the fabric of our society and threatens democracy in the country. Browsing through the bills, we see the noble intentions of the authors, and we hope these intentions will translate into wisely crafted measures that will stop the scourge of mis and disinformation without undermining the freedom of speech and freedom of expression that are the core attributes of democracy. However, we have some concerns. Dalawa lang ang i-mention ko ngayong hapon. But before that, I'd like to underscore the use of the word fake news in crafting the bill. Kasi as much as possible, we avoid using the word fake news. Kasi, number one, the term fake news is an oxymoron. No? It contradicts itself. Pag sinabi natin kasing news sa journalist, dapat totoo yun. Kasi pag hindi yun totoo, hindi yun balita, di chismis yun, di ba? O kaya, So, pag yung word na fake news kasi it undermines the integrity of news. So, it's an oxymoron at saka kaya lang ang problema kasi naging commonly accepted na para bang pag sinabi mong Colgate toothpaste, 'di ba ganon? So, hindi ko alam paano ngayon yan when you craft but at the same time you have to you have to be precise. The bill should be precise. So, hindi ko so, usapan ito paano nyo gagamitin yung word na fake news. Ganun. So, yung mga concerns ko dito sa bill sa mga bills, no? Ang isa ay yung provision which prohibits the use of fictitious online account or website in creating and or publishing content knowing or having a reasonable belief that it contains information that is false. No? Yung sentence medyo kasi iba naman siguro yung idea, yung na knowing that the information is false. Pero marami kasing yung paggamit kasi ng alias o pseudonym is not against is not illegal, di ba? The law allows the use of pseudonym. At saka yung history naman natin kasi is full of instances where pseudonyms served in our in gaining independence and democracy, like yung nung panahon pa ni Jose Rizal, yung mga ganun, gumagamit naman talaga sila ng pseudonym. In fact, well, there are Facebook accounts under an alias that produce falsehoods, marami yan. There are also a number of Facebook accounts that produce intelligent analysis of daily news without carrying the byline of the author. Ang mga examples lang is yung Juan Luna Blog, Nutriban Republic, at saka Morning Coffee Thoughts. These are, hindi mo alam kung sino sumusulat. Pero magagaling, tama yung kanilang analysis. Nakakatulong sa taong bayan para mag-intindi ng mga daily news. So, paano yun? Di ba? So, kung pagbabawal mo yung the use of Pag sinabi mo kasing fictitious online accounts, ano ibig sabihin nun? The use of, do you refer pseudonyms? Parang ganun. So, dapat siguro imayin pa. Yung isa pa is, there are many provisions that outrightly prohibit false and misleading information, which is tama lang. It's just right, no? Yun naman ang reason why nandito tayo ngayon. Bang question lang is, who will determine if that particular information is false or misleading? Giving that task to a government office would create complications on press freedom. So medyo malaking ano yan. Sa ano kasi, balik ako dun sa paggamit ng pag-avoid ng word ng fake news, meron kasi kaming ginagamit sa yung disinformation disorder, nandun yung misinformation, disinformation at saka malinformation. Yung misinformation kasi, yung mga balita, yung mga maling balita na kinakalat mo sa social media na hindi mo sadya, no? Katulad nung may magpapadala sa'yo na wala bang pasok ngayon? Tapos senior mo, nawala yung question mark, so nagiging walang pasok ngayon, di ba? So senior mo, hindi mo naman sadya na hindi mo sadya. Pero yung disinformation naman talaga is may intent ka talaga manloko. Nag-manufacture ka ng isang informasyon, kinakalat mo na to cause harm or confuse people. Pag sinabi mong nagkalat ka ng post na kinidnap si dating Pangulong Duterte, marami yung ganun. Hindi naman kinidnap eh. Mali yun. Ano yun eh. Inano mo yun eh. That's intent, ano talaga yun, yun ang disinformation, di ba? Meron bang kinidnap na kasama niya, executive secretary niya, parang ganun. So, tapos ang malinformation naman, totoo yan, pero totoong informasyon, pero kinakalat mo to embarrass or cause harm to the person. Like, merong, nakuha mo yung diagnosis, yung result, no? Yung doctor's result ng isang tao na merong masamang hindi maganda. Totoo yun. Pero pag kinalat mo yun, that's malinformation. So yun ang dapat siguro yun ang mag-guide tayo when yung crafting the legislations. So we will continue monitoring the bills and we nag-submit kami ng position paper, but we will update our position paper, no, as we go along with the discussions. Ang ano lang namin siguro is, meanwhile, let's make sure that the cure that we are trying to come up with will not be worse than the disease. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma'am Ellen. We would also like to recognize Attorney J.P. Padiernos of Galing sa Puso Party List. So from Rappler, Ms. Gemma Mendoza, Head of Digital Services and Lead Researcher for Disinformation.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this opportunity to air our views with respect to the various bills seeking to address fake news. I echo the concerns raised by our colleague from Vera Files concerning the term fake news. Let's consider more nuanced terms for this, because the term fake news has actually been weaponized against legitimate journalism. We at Rappler recognize that the proliferation of disinformation and digital manipulation is an urgent issue that requires a whole of society approach. We're not yet finished with reviewing all the measures, but in consultation with our partners in the Facts First PH Coalition, we want to raise a few concerns as well as some suggestions for possible legislative reform. Chief of these concerns is the need for alignment of all these policies with human rights and with fundamental human rights. Digital rights are human rights. A fundamental rights-based approach to curbing disinformation should focus on user empowerment and platform accountability. It should be firmly anchored in constitutional protections, including and most especially constitutional and human rights protections, particularly human rights standards in relation to freedom of expression and speech. A rights-based approach should also recognize the freedom of the press and the people's right to access to information about matters that concern their well-being and safety. We must be wary of establishing new bodies with broad powers that risk such bodies becoming an instrument of censorship and curtailment of these rights. At the same time, we also recognize that a rights-based approach should recognize each citizen's right to protection from harm and manipulation. The policies should not mandate that government engage in content substantive decisions. This is something that our coalition partners were very much emphatic at. It must explicitly avoid creating or appointing a single official arbiter of truth. It must not also supplant the work of independent fact-checkers and journalists. With respect to the Digital Media Standards Coalition, we are concerned about the proposal to mandate that the DMSC should be the one accrediting independent, non-partisan fact-check organizations. The international fact-checking community already has an established code of ethics and a transparent process for self-regulation. This is available online and subject to review. Anybody can review the process. This process also includes independent verification of compliance by organizations, by fact-check organizations of these ethical standards. We are concerned, and I think one thing that we want to raise to this body is the need for platform accountability and transparency. Just as news organizations are responsible, news organizations and fact-checkers are all responsible for content we publish, it is very much important to preserve and protect our people's rights to information integrity, for digital platforms to also be responsible for content that they amplify algorithmically. Some possible reforms that would help here are the following. So in the US, we don't have, they have a Section 230 in the 1996 US Communications Decency Act, which is what essentially allows platforms to enjoy impunity because they are basically treated as utilities. They're not publishers. We should treat digital platforms like publishers. Nobody, and this is with respect to things, content, anything that they amplify algorithmically. Nobody should be allowed to profit from lies and scams that they circulate. One model that Congress may want to check is the European Commission's Digital Services Act, which focuses on mandating platform transparency and auditability. And this is something that we want to emphasize. This is very important because we don't know now what is happening within these platforms because they don't really share data that will enable audit of what they are amplifying. So while the people's, and what is being said is that this is because they're protecting user privacy. While people's rights to data privacy should be respected, accountability requires mandated operational transparency. Platforms should be required to disclose their methods for algorithmic amplification and content moderation. They should be required to share data on what their algorithms are amplifying for public audit. While people's rights to privacy of communication should be respected, content amplification is no longer private communication. Content that has been amplified to thousands, even millions, should be akin to a broadcast. some of the content we're talking about here have broader reach than the media organizations here, and that needs to be taken into account. Platforms should also be mandated to preserve digital evidence of fraud and manipulation. This is essential to addressing online impunity and enforcing accountability. Takedowns should not result in data destruction, which could make it difficult then for victims and stakeholders to seek redress or hold digital manipulators accountable. Finally, given the rise of generative AI and deepfakes, platforms should also be required to ensure that synthetic content their systems churn are properly labeled and that the provenance of such content is traceable. Policy should allow data portability and platform interoperability. Today's digital platforms are virtual monopolies, and the reason behind that is because users stay where their networks are. Laws should give users more choices and ownership of their personal data. This encourages platform competition, while also fostering innovation and the implementation of robust community moderation standards. This should also help our innovators and startups catch up in the digital space that is already monopolized by big tech. Last year, the state of Utah enacted the Digital Choices Act. This is something that is worth looking into. The law, which takes effect in 2026, will give users the ability to receive their personal data, for example, by downloading in a format that would be transferable to other platforms. This could include data. This includes data on friends or connections, comments, photos, likes, and their social graph that a user would want to take with them. This is very important because what makes users stay on a platform is the fact that their social networks, their families and friends are also on the platform. Finally, the core strategy in the long term for addressing disinformation and online manipulation is empowerment of citizens. This means strengthening media and digital literacy initiatives and providing young people and older people. We find that a lot of the times the ones who are affected are really the older folk, with the skills to critically evaluate online information and ensure online information. State efforts to curb disinformation and misinformation should ensure that resources are provided for these critical educational efforts. In the age of AI and disinformation, media literacy and competency is no longer an option. It's no longer optional. They are necessary skills that every citizen should have in order to effectively engage in the marketplace of ideas and participate in democratic governance. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Mendoza. So next, we will have the cybersecurity and tech specialists. And may we also request the resource persons to try to keep it brief and make your points. Siguro the most important points na lang muna, because we still have around 11 other resource persons, and then we are going to discuss. We're still going to have some discussions. So for Zerolytics and Data and AI Ethics PH, we have Dominic Ligot. You have the floor.
Honorable Chair and members of the committee. We have many bills, but the chair requested a unified direction, and we feel we could have a concrete answer. So over the past few years, we've seen a sharp increase in what we call organized disinformation, particularly around politics. These campaigns are not random netizens expressing opinions. They are engineered operations that exploit social media, AI, and human psychology. They are PR firms, they are troll farms. So to be clear, when we say organized disinformation, these are paid actors. These actors weaponize the ecosystem, while ordinary citizens inadvertently become the amplifier. So we already have libel and slander in the law that address individual acts of falsehood. But what we lack are mechanisms that address these organized conspiracies to systematically spread the falsehoods. So our humble insight, and just to be brief, is while debating falsehood attracts the attention, this is often where many debates lie, what really endangers society is the use of paid actors and technologies to mass produce and spread the falsehoods. Even the tools using AI to detect AI content, they have mixed results, probably 60% accurate at best. So the Honorable Chair requested the direction. Organized, paid, and technology-supported disinformation, we humbly submit that this should be the angle. Basing on impressions alone, organized disinformation arguably accounts for 99% of all of the harmful disinformation online today. These are not the random netizens spreading memes. Organized disinformation spread vaccine hesitancy during the pandemic. Organized disinformation distorted campaigns and elections in Indonesia, in India, and arguably in the Philippines. Organized disinformation spread hate speech and genocide in Myanmar. And most importantly, I am going to hang on to what the AMLC mentioned. Organized disinformation is funded. Social ads were purchased, websites were built, trolls were hired, so there is an economic component to it. Finding the money flow is the best evidence that identifies and traces these conspiracies. And cutting the money flow is the key to killing this beast. So just to summarize what we put in our position paper, 5 points. First, a lot of our bills talk about malicious intent, but that's very hard to legislate because in most cases, online behavior is quick, casual, and uninformed. So first, we would recommend avoiding laws and language that hinge on guessing motives. We do support the creation of an independent body to serve as an oversight for what constitutes false and not false. But as my colleagues in journalism also mentioned, we might want to move away from a vague term like fake news. And again, going back to the stats, the biggest threat isn't really inaccurate posts. It's the systematic misuse of social platforms by local, paid, and state-sponsored actors. So we support platform accountability. But maybe a more effective path is one of cooperation. Let's cooperate with other countries where these platforms operate. Let's do MOUs with these platforms, not just social media, but the AI companies. Because companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, they're being used to create synthetic media, but we don't have a relationship with them. Nothing should stop anyone from generating as many images for themselves. But the moment they publish them, that's when a line is crossed. I also echo the caution that the journalists have raised. Let's be careful about laws that can be weaponized if we're not careful. We've seen it already in other countries, even our own revised Penal Code 154. This has been used to silence journalists. And although real name registration could be helpful, but it opens the door to surveillance and also can be leaked in case these databases are hacked. And again, our track record on databases and hacking could certainly improve. Finally, we need to address the real root cause. Outside of the paid actors, the real reason this information spreads is because the public doesn't really know any better. So we should invest in media, digital, and AI